Hello, Anthony.
Hello.
It is so nice to see you.
Thank you. You too.
And I also would like to welcome anybody who might be watching us either live right now or is catching the replay or who might be watching us in the future, listening to us in the future as a podcast episode. So, this is part of the 30 days of transferable skills initiative, where each day in the month of December, I either post or have a video or I have a conversation like today with Anthony about transferable skills from a wealth of different experiences that could be unpaid care work, volunteering, extensive traveling. And so, for people who might not know you yet, Anthony, could you please introduce yourself with 5 facts, which is according to the working out loud method?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, just real quick, I'm a father of two. I have a 7-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. I have a personal finance blog with the goal of helping people learn and improve their personal finances. I spent 10 years in the United States Navy as a nuclear engineer, and now I'm a military spouse and stay-at-home dad. I have, since graduating college in 2004, I've moved 11 times, living in 9 states and 2 countries. And I'm always looking to learn and grow. And for me, the biggest areas include fitness, investing, and growing my faith.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's amazing. All the traveling and living in different places. Yeah, it's there is a lot of experiences. And now you mentioned you are a stay-at-home dad right now. And so I'm curious that, like, when you started your career, what had you thought about, what experiences did you have with caregiving?
Well, growing up, towards when I was in high school, both my parents worked. So, and I have a younger sister. So I did a lot of help taking care of things around the house and doing little odds and ends. So most of my caregiving was through doing some food shopping and cooking, yard work, cleaning the house. I did occasionally babysit, but not. It was always older kids, never babies and toddlers, which is a whole different ball of wax altogether.
Absolutely. And so now, like, did you sort of anticipate then, like, that part of your career would be what I call like a work module of caregiving? How did you think about this?
Um, I just never really never crossed my mind until like as we were my wife and I were approaching where this was becoming our decision point. Um, so even people that knew me before, people that knew me growing up, were definitely probably very surprised that this is the route that I ended up going down. But it's been very rewarding and it's worked out great for our family.
And so, what made you decide that you were going to be the stay-at-home dad?
Well, initially, the plan had always been that we would have a stay-at-home parent.
Mhm.
I grew up with a mom that um, she would work part-time. She would do substitute teaching, and my wife's mom mostly stayed home for their entire time. And it's very good for family, for the children, stability. But for us, we had talked about that and made the decision that my wife was going to stay home. Um,
Oh,
and then at it's almost 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago, I started having I got an injury with my back, and my recovery was very slow. And in the military, at least in the U.S. military, you have a limited time to get recovered and back to your regular job. And if you can't, at that point, they off ramp you to um, to get out of the military. So at that point, we were a decision point for my wife's career, what she was going to do. And at that point, we decided that she was going to stay. at least for a few years, because we didn't know what was going to happen with me, if what additional care I was going to need necessarily. So I got out of the military, and my son was born 10 weeks later, and I became a stay-at-home dad.
Wow, what a change. Wow. And so I'm curious, what kind of transferable skills did you have from your military or your engineering schooling background that helped you or could help you being a stay-at-home dad?
So I'd say, no matter what job you're going to, there's always going to be something you can bring to another field that you go to. For me, the biggest one was probably time management. Probably anybody in most jobs, but especially from my experience in the military, it's that like you always have stuff to do, you always have more stuff to do, and you always have more stuff to do after that's done. So trying to get everything done, manage your time, that was a great skill to bring to being a stay-at-home parent. And as I was learning as a stay-at-home dad, and as we had another child, so things get more complex. The effort you have to put forward to take care of both kids adds more time. So one of the big things that I used to look at was this, like really trying to make an effort to streamline and make the things I needed to do more efficient. Whether it's something as simple as I needed to go out and run errands, to plan them out and in a way that would be the easiest to get them all done quickly with the least amount of stress for the kids and around all of their naps or playtimes or all that kind of stuff. And another one for me is coming from the nuclear power side of the Navy, is that in that community, clear communication is incredibly vital and important when you're operating. So that has been a great tool to bring to being a stay-at-home dad, and even that, it's kids, and you could say things clear as day, and it still doesn't matter. So, but yeah, those are probably the two biggest things that I brought from the Navy to being a stay-at-home dad.
That is really so interesting. Yeah. And I mean, the communication, I have teenagers. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so what I'd like to know is, so has it actually been like being a stay-at-home dad? Are there any other stay-at-home dads in your neighborhood?
So there are a few stay-at-home dads around in the neighborhoods. Being right now, we live on a military base, so there are a few more here than there were in other places we've lived. Even at that, there is, it's still one of those where you have to mesh with their personalities and have similar interests to really to want to go do things even with the kids. So that's one thing that I haven't really come across, where I've had another stay-at-home dad that clicks super well, and we go do all kinds of things together, become great friends, and that's just part of life, and that's okay. That's fine with me. But as a stay-at-home dad, it's been a very interesting experience. It's been positive and negative. There's definitely a stigma being a stay-at-home dad for some people. There are some people that are like literally will say, "Oh, that's awesome, great, good for you." You have the other kind that kind of are more reserved, like, "Oh, okay, like it's not something I should be doing." But as people, especially as parents and moms who get to know me better, they realize that, right, I am doing the same role they're doing, and I do all of that stuff in the house. I literally have it set up where with my wife and I, like, the things that I don't do in the house were the chores that I did for about a decade growing up. So it's just one of those, I've been burned out on a few things, but everything else, right? I take care of most of the cleaning, food shopping, cooking, all that stuff. And I feel like there's a lot of still just built in society that a guy's not really able to do some of those things. And I think it's slowly going away. But it's still there, unfortunately. But it's been, I have to say that when I find find those moms that are awesome, and it's I'm just so happy that like my kids get along great with your kids, and there's never any friction. Those are everywhere I've lived, there have been just some incredible moms that are very supportive of me being a stay-at-home dad, and our kids get along great, and they're able to play together, and that's to me one of the most important parts. It's right. I'm not staying home for me, right? I'm staying home as a stay-at-home parent for my kids. That's the main purpose. So
that thank you so much for sharing this. And I think this is one of the things why I feel it's so important that especially stay-at-home dads need to speak up more. And I'm super appreciative that here on LinkedIn we have that opportunity to share more about your experiences. And to be very honest, I hadn't really thought this through, but you're absolutely right that if there are fewer stay-at-home dads, then finding someone that clicks, it's just right from a math perspective will be just harder. But I hadn't really thought about this. You're absolutely right. And I'm very appreciative to hear that the community of stay-at-home moms is appreciative. And and the other thing is also, I think what you just described is to really point out to people that caregiving is, anybody can do this. This is not something that often people automatically think, okay, caregiving is not only something moms can do. But you are a perfect example here that it is possible. So thank you so much for sharing that, Anthony.
you're welcome.
And now, as we are thinking, potentially HR professionals listening to us or business leaders, what I would love to hear from you is, from your time as a stay-at-home dad, what type of transferable skills do you feel you have learned during that time that would be helpful if, say one day you are, returning back to paid work? What would you say these skills are?
I'd say I'd say a lot goes unnoticed and missed in for what stay-at-home parents do, especially if they're all in and they're owning it as their profession at the time. For me, the big skills that I've grown, and I've been stay-at-home dad for over 7 years. Improving time management, the clear and concise communication has continued to grow and evolve as as kids can understand and communicate better, and overall planning, organization, and again efficiency. From the planning aspect, planning and organization, I do pretty much everything for the family, for trips, for any of the kids' activities, and I'm always essentially I tell my wife, she asks what she can do. It's like, pack your bag. Hey, I got everything else. Make sure you're ready to go. I'm packed for me and the kids, and I have all that taken care of. And for me personally, right? And this is one of those for, especially for people, stay-at-home parents wanting to get back in the workforce, is I use the time to learn and grow. I'm a football fan, so aside from football, we don't really watch a whole lot of TV in the house. And for me, like, my personal growth has come in learning more and more all the time about finance, and working on the personal finance blog. Reading, learning, and like figuring out what things that I need to do, especially with like for me, like learning more about right my injury and what I can do, what I need to do to take care of it, so I can keep, um, you know, so I can keep going to keep doing what I need to do for my family. So if I have a setback, then that shifts the burden and that shifts what I'm able to do. So that's also for me, like taking care of my health is important to be able to keep moving forward. Um, Another big one for me is naturally I'm actually pretty introverted. I have a very I'm a person that will go on a 10-mile hike by myself and be happy as can be, put some headphones in, look around, take tons of pictures. Um, but as a stay-at-home dad, that's not really an option. Um, Moms aren't going to be as willing to walk up to me as they are to walk up to another mom, and that's totally understandable. But that's also helped me um, be able to walk up to and introduce myself and to meet other people, other moms, way easier, and like break the ice and start a conversation with them. So it's kind of pushed me out of my comfort zone, um, and allowed me to grow more and be able to um, use that tool when it's necessary for me.
This is amazing. And I feel we hear a lot on the business side about upskilling, reskilling, lifelong learning. And what you just described fits really exactly into these parameters, that it's a constant change. And I find it amazing to hear, as you described, that you're more of an introvert. And I'm extra appreciative that you said, yes, I'm coming on LinkedIn Live to share my story. So I think that's just awesome. And so one other thing I wanted to know is, if you reflect back, what would you have liked to have known before you became a stay-at-home dad about being a stay-at-home dad?
The biggest things, and I'm sure this is probably the same for anybody that's been a stay-at-home dad, or even probably for most parents in general, just the amount of patience required with children, and that was probably my hardest part of my transition was the patience needed for kids, especially when things I'm doing or things that we're going to go do or set up solely for them, and like you still can't get them to help and put shoes on or get ready to go to the bathroom, get ready to go out the door. So that has been my patience. I mean, and I was very impatient, and having kids and being a stay-at-home dad has definitely grown that as a skill for me, that I can know I need to, being more patient with them. They need to understand more, and that also that's also it improves over time. So if you have little kids, then you're in the worst of it. It should get better. I don't know. I don't have any teenagers yet, so I can't speak on that front yet. But
yes, I would say it goes up and down, and I couldn't agree with you more on the patient side. Yes. It's like, yeah,
and then I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead,
but
please.
then there was like along with the patience, but just that, right? The amount of time it takes to do things, right? Normally, right? If you don't have any kids, or if you're going out by yourself, right? Grab your keys, walk out of the house, get in the car, and go. But if you're bringing children, right? Depending on how old they are, you're opening the door, you're putting them in the car, you're buckling them in the car. And that's after everything you did to prepare to walk out the door, whether it's getting their shoes on or preparing a diaper bag, making sure you have snacks and water bottles. It's just the amount of stuff needed to do prior to walking out the door is I mean, you just have to allocate more time, and it's, it's not anything negative or, due to the children. It's just part of parenthood, and adjusting to that grind where, you're not just responsible for you, you're responsible for the other little people that you're taking care of.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the time, like things, putting stuff in a stroller, the amount of stuff I would be carrying everywhere, just in case, all of these scenarios. And yes, it's like planning ahead. Yes. Now, Anthony, it's really, really lovely to talk to you and learn more about your experience as a stay-at-home dad. Is there anything that you would like to share with our audience that we have not covered yet?
Yeah, I mean, there are there's a lot of stay-at-home parents, and I know everybody's situation is different. There's people that literally they don't have the personality to handle being a stay-at-home parent. That's just who they are, and that's fine. That works. That they make that work. But for me personally, right, it's been a blessing for me to be able to stay home, like, whether it was me or my wife, to be able to stay home, take care of our family. For us, it's worked out incredibly well. Also, it's she knows that I keep all the plates spinning at home, and so that allows her to focus and excel at work, because she knows everything's taken care of here and she doesn't have to worry about it. Like, we're a team. We are committed to things as a team, and my role is a stay-at-home dad, and to do things on this side of our family, and I'm proud of that, because I'm very aware that is important, whether, like, depending on how it's viewed from the outside. Like, I know that for everybody that's a stay-at-home parent, it's harder than most jobs you'd have in the real world, because it doesn't stop, and it just keeps going. So, and one of the big things for us, and I don't know if it's true for other families, but overall, I would say, with me not working, like, our quality of life as a family is much higher, because everything I do, right, I try to do, especially now with school's in session, I try to get everything done that I don't need my wife or the kids for, completed while they're at school, or my wife's at work, which gives us a lot more time to do things as a family when everybody's here, or the kids are home and they want to go do something, right? It's a lot easier to do that, because like, I take it as my job to do things while my wife's at work and the kids are at school. And like, as we spoke about before, right, like, the gaps, hopefully, right, companies and human resources will become more open about gaps in employment, for stay-at-home parents, and for anybody else, right? I mean, when I was in the Navy, there were times that I was working 60, 80 hours a week. Like, you can only do that for so long before you have health problems, before, whether it's physical health or mental health, and sometimes people just recharge batteries. Being a stay-at-home parent, I wouldn't say you're really recharging batteries a whole lot, but it's a little more now that the kids are in school. That's definitely helpful. But those gaps, especially if they're a stay-at-home parent, or even if they're traveling, right, they're using that time and not, right, sitting on their butt. Like, there could be a gap because they're educating themselves, because they're traveling, because they're a stay-at-home parent, because they're caregiving, right? That's one of the things, like, caregiving for, right, a family member.
Right.
And it's looked at as unemployed, but I'd say it's definitely a far cry from unemployment. And it's challenging, it's time consuming. So, and I would say, like, if it would be a great thing for, like, what you're doing is great to try and get, those companies and, HR to realize that, it's not unemployment, it's skill, but it's full employment, beyond full employment, arguably. And with that, I mean, you're managing your time and the time of everybody else that you're taking care of while you're a caregiver or stay-at-home parent. And I don't see how that could be, like, that should be never be negatively viewed upon, because that's an asset. If you can manage your time well, like, and you have the skills to learn whatever job it is, right, you'll be an asset if you can manage your time well wherever you work. And it's and at the same time, like, there are people that, right now there's no view for my wife and I for me to go back to work. Just doesn't make sense for us. And some people, they will just stay at home and raise their children and take care of their household, and that's a great thing. And I think it's very undervalued as a society. I mean, I don't have experiences elsewhere, but the way society is pushed in the United States towards, everybody's got to work. It's like, I think everybody has to work, which you need to enjoy life. If you're working too much and you're overstressed and you're not enjoying things, then at what point is it not worth it? So it's hopefully, as kids get older and stay-at-home parents are ready to transition back into the professional world, hopefully the companies and organizations are more open to accepting them after, taking, you could argue, is a career sacrifice to stay at home and take care of their family. And in that sense, to me, I would argue that they have their priorities straight. Like you said, you're a stay-at-home mom, and, like, for the people that do it, they probably recognize going into it that it is something that's important to their family and their children, that that should have a way bigger return on investment over the long term.
Thank you so much for sharing this. What I feel is often underestimated is that one is so used to, in a professional setting, to have, goals, whether that is quarterly goals or annual goals. And, you are there with a manager, and it is often, one works towards the goals. And in a setting like being a stay-at-home parent, ultimately it is all self-learned, self-taught, and there is little outward appreciation, really. So one has to, I feel, also start learning to sort of, I know what the word is in English, compliment oneself maybe about it. And I think it makes one, I feel, it's a very humbling experience. That's how I felt, because in a professional setting, it is very much, to me, it feels outward driven, because other people recognize somebody's, worth by what they have done, how they maybe move up the ladder, versus the managers, i.e. the little kids, they have no appreciation that dad or mom, did the things for them, and they might not appreciate it in the moment either, or they might argue as a teenager. And I feel, looking back, I feel I have a bigger appreciation of my parents, reflecting back now. And so I think that's maybe the other difference, that there is maybe appreciation from one's own kids on the work that one has done, but it is, severely delayed by 10 or 20 years or however long. until one has one's own kids. So yeah, so well, I so appreciate, Anthony, that you talked with me and so openly and authentically shared your experience. So for somebody who might not have children yet, it will be really helpful also to listen, to get some experience, and for HR professionals and business leaders who can hear your story. So thank you very, very much.
You're welcome, Karen. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate being able to share my experiences, and hopefully it does help in the work you're doing, which I think is incredibly important to get the word out there and the realization out there of what caregivers, stay-at-home parents can bring to the table for organizations.
Thank you very, very much. I'm going to just put the slide in how people can find the podcast, where our conversation will be probably in January. And so thank you very much again. Goodbye.
All right, bye-bye.